Hi, I'm Bill Doherty, and I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. Bill's Bullpen is a program that's intended to give folks an idea of what's going on regionally. Today, I have with me somebody who aspires to leave the House of Representatives in our great and general court to become a state senator, Dylan Fernandes.
Pleasure to be with you.
Dylan, it's good to see you. And one of the things that people want to know is, who is Dylan Fernandes? Where are you from?
I'm from here. I grew up, I'm a fourth generation resident of the Cape. Family came over from the Azores, like a lot of Portuguese families 4 generations ago. They actually settled in Falmouth as farmers, strawberry farmers. This area used to be the biggest exporter of strawberries in the country.
It certainly was.
Yeah. And life was never easy for my father's family, the Fernandes family. And I'm actually the first generation college student from this family. Went off to school, an opportunity.
Where'd you go to college?
Well, I went to College of Charleston for undergrad, and then I went to Harvard for my master's.
In Charleston, which school? One of my granddaughters went to Carolina Coastal.
Yeah, so this is College of Charleston,
okay.
So right in the heart of Charleston.
And that granddaughter that went to that school married a guy that went to
CFC.
Yeah, and if you go into Boston and you pass Neponset Circle, you see his billboard up there, Mike Kelly.
Okay.
He's an injury lawyer.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I'll have to check him out. Good. If I get injured, I'll call you.
Absolutely.
Or I'll call Mike.
No, I had a very dear friend, Senator Fernandes, in Harwich.
Yeah.
And is there any relationship in Harwich?
Fernandes in Portugal is like Smith in the U.S.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's hard to know, but there's a lot of people from the Azores that are in this area. So, I'm related to a lot of Pachicos, a lot of Fernandeses. And,
I had a direct report of Pachico when I was working in New Bedford.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Fernandes and Pachicos.
Yeah. And the family stopped through. My great-grandparents got married in Fall River before coming to Falmouth. So I think they spent some time there as well,
Yeah,
like so many Portuguese families.
There's an in-migration, that happens based upon where opportunities, are. Yeah. Ironically, my mother was, when she was growing up, worked in a strawberry field in Belmont, when Belmont was was basically an agricultural community.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the things that both of us went to One Cape, and one of the things that I was very impressed with was Julian Sear and Sarah Peak. We're talking about something very important to me, which was housing and housing support. And I guess this is your time to tell us what exactly are your policies with regard to all of these things.
Yeah. Well, we certainly have a huge challenge with housing across the Cape and Islands. People in my generation, a lot of my friends locally, have just given up looking for housing because the cost is so high. And we have seniors who want to downsize. You talk to employers. The number one issue that they're facing is a lack of housing for their employees. So it's a Cape-wide issue. There's a lot of things that we need to do on this. We just passed the largest housing bill in a generation.
Yeah.
Just got signed into law a little over a month ago. This is a really big deal. It has accessory dwelling units by right. It has a lot of money towards different types of housing, veterans housing, all sorts of housing, puts a lot more money towards it. And then we were able to carve out specific provisions for the Cape and for the islands. And so this is really important for our region. We were able to carve out what's called a seasonal communities designation, of which the Cape towns are a part of. And so now there will be an office at the state level to issue special regulations for our region and for our particular housing needs, because we're unique here and we're different than many other places in the Commonwealth, so we need our own special regulations. And then under this designation, municipalities, all the towns on the Cape, we'll be able to use public funds to fund employee housing as well, which is a big issue because when we think about the sustainability of our communities, right now we're in as a middle school or a high school or some combination of both. We need housing for our teachers, we need housing for our firefighters, our police officers. That's a really big piece as well, and that's something that, in running for state senate is a big difference between me and my opponent in the race. I'm the only person running to support the seasonal communities designation and support the bill, and so that's I think that's really important for voters to know because it's such a huge issue impacting us in our region.
Yeah, well, I was on a housing authority for 25 years, and although it was a small one, those issues have been with us, for a long time. One of the big concerns when you're talking about what this housing bill will do, because I think the implementation of this in a successful way is going to depend upon our legislatures going forward rather than what's been put in place. Is the part where we have footprints that are available. And at One Cape, when we talked about this, it was we're not successfully using a 2-acre availability because we're committed to the amount of tax revenue that comes from a large house. Whereas if we used it, if we were able to develop what I would call garden apartments, or, and God forbid that anybody gets involved with high-rise on the Cape, but just a more successful use of, let's say, of footprints, so either cluster zoning or, garden apartments, would seem to move towards following this.
Yeah, and that's a part of the bill, right? So a lot of towns currently in the region have accessory dwelling unit or in-law or garden apartment bylaws, but very few units have actually been built since those bylaws have been passed, because a lot of times those bylaws are hard to follow, and so and they're quite expensive. I have a family member who put in an ADU, and it was quite expensive and a very long permitting process. So one of the things that the state bill does is it says that you can do ADUs by right. Still, the setbacks are the same for the community and things like that, but it's a more uniform code for the ADUs. And so I think what you'll end up seeing in the next year and a half is, once the builders get on top of exactly what the code is statewide, that you'll see opportunities for them to be manufactured and built at scale. So you'll have really significantly cheaper ADUs that you can buy because they can mass produce them, build them at scale, build them prefabricated, which is one of the most popular ways to build now already. And so I think once the builders catch up with the regs, then you're going to see a lot of much cheaper options for people to have those accessory dwelling, and it's up to 900 square feet. Still pretty small, but actually the exact type of housing that we need here when we think of starter homes, when we think of, this is one of the tightest rental markets in the country on the Cape. And when we think of seniors who want to downsize and sell their own home or give their own home up for rental, these are the exact types of properties we want to be encouraging here.
Well, I do recall that in another life, I was involved with looking at the amount of square footage that would be in as a minimum in senior housing, and it was 476 square feet, which means you had to go outside of the apartment in order to turn around to get back into it.
Yeah.
So anyway, here you have a record that you're running on as well. Okay, how long were you a state representative?
A little, around 7.5 years. Currently still a state representative and will be through the end of the year. But yeah, really proud of my record. Passed 30 bills into law in that time, passed some really big statewide legislation. I'm the vice chair of the Committee on the Environment in the legislature. And so the only candidate running who's actually passed statewide bills, which I think is an important piece to have when you want someone who can deliver for you as a state senator. And then I've been able to bring back millions of dollars for the district. Just this past year, over $2 million in just in budget funding, let alone set aside all the grants and stuff.
What exactly was that money for? justified for?
Yeah, well, a lot of different things. So one was funding for the Cape Y, which we're trying to bring in here. We're trying to create an Upper Cape Y. We don't have one. It's a really important asset.
Cape wide what?
An Upper Cape YMCA. Upper Cape Y. Yeah. We don't have one here. It would be a great
didn't
asset.
they buy some property down at the old Lutheran church?
They're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is funding to help get the project moving. We got a lot of funding for our fishermen here on the Cape. This is, we have an incredibly vibrant fishing community here.
What are we going to do now that Sarah Peak isn't helping you out with this?
Well, these are my budget amendments, not Sarah's, so they're separate. But we got over $500,000 for the Cape Cod Fishermen's Alliance, just my budget earmark, and then we got another $150,000 for shellfish propagation, just my budget earmark. These are really important things for the fishing industry, really help fishing families. And then on the shellfish propagation piece, really important because oysters in particular, yes, they're delicious, we should encourage them, but they also act as natural filters and help with water quality issues in the community as well. So, bringing back money, one of the first bills, statewide bills I got passed through the House was legislation. Donald Trump and I got elected the same night back in 2016, and one of the first things he did was pull the country out of the Paris Climate Agreement, this really important national agreement to take on global warming. I think that was a big mistake. One of the first things I did was file legislation and then within 9 months get it passed through the House, signing Massachusetts onto the Paris Climate Agreement and sending a message that this handful of climate deniers in Washington, D.C. didn't speak for the people of the Cape or didn't speak for the people of Massachusetts. So, bringing back funding, passing statewide really important legislation that's impactful to us here are things that I have a record of doing, and I think that's something that really distinguishes me from my Republican opponent in the race.
Well, I don't think he's been elected anything before, has he?
Well, he's currently a state rep. Yeah.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Out of Plymouth?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what exactly is your district?
So the district that I'm running for is Falmouth, Mashpee, Bourne, and Sandwich on the Cape side, and then over the bridge, Plymouth, Kingston, Pembroke, and Plimpton. And so it's 160,000 people. It's about 4 times the size as a state representative district, and it's a really fascinating place. But the issues in Bourne are true and very similar to the issues in Plymouth and Kingston.
That's interesting you say that, because when I run for office on the Cape, it was always each of the 15 towns were unique.
Yeah.
We have special problems. You don't really understand that what works in Bourne does not work in Provincetown. But that was part of what I call the traditional mantra that you would hear. There's a lot more similarities than there were differences, over time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, every town is unique, but actually when you look at the biggest issues they're facing, a lot of it is the same. So, we talked about the affordability issues, especially around housing. What's that doing for the workforce? What's that doing for the sustainability of the community? Environment issues are very similar throughout the district. It's a very coastal area, both on this side of the bridge and the other side of the bridge, and so the impacts of sea level rise are really big. How is our water quality doing? That's a really huge issue here in Bourne. True for all the Cape towns.
Oh, and it's especially true in Bourne right now, because I don't believe that they've actually adopted a wastewater management plan. So how are you going to help with that?
Well, we'd be happy to help, because one thing, so in my current job, I represent 9 towns, and actually the job I'm running for, it's fewer towns, even though it's a bigger area. And so one thing that I've done in my current role is connect towns with each other, or even I represent 3 counties at the moment too. So connecting counties with each other as well, to talk about what things that they have done that worked for their town, and how can that be replicated for another town that's looking to do something similar.
Wait a minute. Bristol County, Plymouth County, and Barnstable County, you represent them now?
I represent Nantucket County,
Oh, Nantucket.
Dukes
So
County,
us
and
Capies
Barnstable County.
forget about,
Yeah.
Nantucket
You can't
and
forget
Martha.
about, yeah, these are huge counties here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, so I represent, so there's 6 towns on the vineyard, and then Gosnold, the Cuttyhunk
Yeah.
Island chain, is the 7th town in Dukes County.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm relieved to hear that.
Yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
wondering, what would you be doing in Bristol County?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a different
Different
issue.
area.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that had, I was the chief elected official on the workforce board for several years, and one of the things that concerned me was they would basically get very excited about job creation that was like about $11 an hour.
Yeah.
Now, both of us know, and one of the conversations that we'd had was that reps are paid today what I would call at a reasonable level in terms of being able to afford, to do that. Whereas in order to live on the Cape, and we talked about housing earlier, we're talking about a median value of about $800,000, and so that suggests you have to have a family income of let's say between $150,000 and $200,000 a year, which is kind of tough to get on the Cape. So my question to you is, what do you suggest we need to do in order to support that, as far as what government can do?
Yeah, well, it can do a few things. I think one thing that's true for our region is we really have a missing middle, where there's a whole lot of families here that don't qualify for Capital A affordable because they make too much, but the housing market is $800,000, $1 million for a median home price, and so they definitely don't make enough to get to that home value as well. And so what we need is programs that help the middle class, and so that
like
could mean raising the AMI, the area median income limits for families who make 150% AMI, 200% AMI, so that they can qualify for the same housing programs that people who make 60% of AMI or 85% of AMI get, so that they're getting housing options as well. I think that is a really important piece. I think that's something that we're going to look at doing with the seasonal communities designation, and that opens it up for the teachers, firefighters, police officers, municipal workers, people in the service industry and the like. That would help them be able to afford housing as well. And so that's a really important piece. One piece that I've put forward is around a first-time home buyer's savings account. It's really because of the high cost of homes.
You and Kamala Harris, huh?
Yeah, well, hers is a little more generous than mine.
Yeah.
So this is just instead of giving people directly a big amount of money, this is just setting up a savings account that is tax exempt for your housing down payment.
Now,
And
that's
so,
something similar to subsidized housing over the years, because there was an attempt, when I was still in the housing authority, to that people could set up that housing trust fund for themselves that they could draw on later to do it. I don't know whatever came of that. Is that still in effect?
To my knowledge, it's not, but it might be something different.
Okay.
This is just you'd be able to set up a savings account. You wouldn't have to pay taxes on the money that you put into the savings account, and you could use that for a down payment on your home. And really, you want to try to get to your 20% down payment. If you can't get there, you have to pay mortgage insurance, which is just paying basically free money to the bank, free money to a large financial institution. So that's just not great for people looking to buy their first home, their starter home, get a foot in the door. And so this will help make it a little bit easier. And that's just look, I think when it comes to housing and affordability, there's a lot of things we need to do, and I don't think there's any silver bullet. I think there's a lot of different options we need on the table.
Build more housing.
Yeah.
Build more dwelling units.
Yeah.
I think that would be would be a solution. In my mind, it was always a solution. Now, there is a difference between what the House does and what the Senate does. And one of the things that's always bothered me is the rush to judgment at the end of the what I'd call the year, whereas during the last couple of weeks, everything is sort of rushed through, and as a result, the opportunity for deliberation and discrimination with regard to, let's say, rational thought tends to be put aside in the rush to get everything there. And one of the things that I've noted is that there are a lot of what I'd call things that are added on to some of this legislation as it's being rushed through at the end. When you were in the House of Representatives, what was your approach to this? You get paid all year to get stuff done. Why is this always at the end where you have all this stuff that has to be looked at? What's the reason for it?
Yeah, well, that's true of any complex negotiation when you have two very different positions, that it comes down to a deadline, and you need deadlines in any type of negotiation. But if there's a negotiation where two parties are really dug in, it usually comes down to the last minute. And so that's just a function of basic principles of negotiation. I do think that it's a problem, though, and I think that we need to get more stuff done before that end of year deadline, because nothing makes me angrier than seeing good pieces of legislation not get passed. But when you look at, say, this session, we passed a lot of things before that deadline. For the first time, kids have universal school meals here.
Amen.
I know, about time. No kid should be going to school hungry. They should be focused on learning. We passed universal community college for the first time, so that kids can be able to afford college. And we passed the largest tax package in a generation, $1 billion in tax cuts. There's components in there. I got through with Senator Sear a piece changing our estate tax. We used to have the lowest, most onerous estate tax in the nation, really impacting middle-class families. It was set at $1 million, and there's a cliff effect. So if you're $1,001,000, your entire estate for your family was taxed. And so we put forward legislation called an act to mitigate snowbird relocation, because we wanted people to stay here and not leave to avoid paying the estate tax. And now it's doubled to $2 million, and that cliff effect is gone. So people are only taxed on the third million. That's a big deal for this region in particular, because home values have increased so much that a lot of middle class people were being impacted by that. And within that, we tripled the septic tax credit as well, which is a huge issue for our region. So it went from 6,000 to 18,000. That's a really big deal and a huge for our region. And then we also, after that 18,000, you get a zero interest loan to make it more affordable. But look, I think to get back to your point, there are also things that didn't pass by July 31st. Almost all of them get passed in informal session, which happens after that. And so 5 bills have passed already in informal session. More will pass. Almost all of them, I think, will get passed by the end of the year. So it's not as hard a deadline as you might think. Really, the hardest deadline is the end of the year when session officially restarts. But I also think that, we need to, this past cycle was I think worse in terms of things going to the end of the line than any one I've been a part of. And I think that if you're not getting things done, there should be change in terms of leadership positions. And I'm one of only 5 Democrats to vote for term limits on the longest serving speaker in Massachusetts history. I think it's important that we that you don't concentrate power into one person's hands for too long. And so I'm very supportive of term limits and those leadership roles, so that you do get turnover and new ideas and fresh looks on how to do things.
Well, since I did not run for a 4th term as a county commissioner, I certainly agree with that, because I stepped away voluntarily, because I do believe in that, that you do need to bring more newer voices, newer thoughts, newer ideas into something if you're truly going to serve the people. Now, there's always that talk about constituent services, and just briefly, because we're getting close to the end of this.
Sure.
Just briefly say, tell us what should people really look to you for services for? Give us some idea about, you know,
Yeah.
why would they call you, or why should they call you?
Yeah.
I guess is a better question.
Well, they can call me for anything. So my number is right on the front page of our website, DylanFernandes.com. They can reach out anytime. We've helped thousands of people over the years on a whole host of different issues, whether that's helping people with unemployment insurance, helping people get health care, helping people navigate state agencies, or connecting them with the appropriate federal agency to help on that level as well, or a municipal one,
Okay.
depending on it. So people should reach out to us. They often do. We've dealt with
Yeah, I
dealt with
know.
thousands of things over the years, and even if it's not something we have control over, we try to find the person or group
Okay.
that does and connect them there.
Now, what's the difference between what you would done as a representative and what you could do as a senator as far as those same issues?
Well, at the Senate level, you can have more of an impact, which is why I'm running for the position. You can have a greater impact. You can get more done, I think. And then it was really important to me that we have someone who has a seat at the table for this area, because decisions made in the next few years in the Senate district are going to impact us for the next 100, and none bigger than the Cape Bridges. And so having someone who's in the majority, who has a seat at the table, and I'll be the only person in the majority with that seat at the table, to make sure that we're having these bridges built responsibly in ways that fit the Cape community. That's really important.
Now, right now, we only got a couple of minutes.
Sure.
I want you to look at I want you to look and give you a pitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm Dylan
Just
Fernandes.
look at me.
Yeah.
Because
Where am I looking?
you're looking at
Camera,
me.
you? Okay. Well, I really hope to earn your vote. I hope to earn the people of Bourne and the Cape's vote. I'm someone who has delivered for this community, has a track record of doing that, but also someone who, the only person who believes in a woman's right to reproductive freedom. My opponent voted against the Roe Act. I supported the Roe Act to protect a woman's right to choose. Only person to support the Affordable Homes Act, which we discussed, is a huge deal for our region. It's really important that we have that here. So only person to support that. And I'm only person to support the environmental bill that went through the House this year as well. So there are big distinctions in this race when it comes to supporting a woman's right to control decisions about her own body, when it comes to housing affordability in our region, and when it comes to protecting our environment.
You make a big case.
Yeah, well,
And I can only say thank you very much for coming, and I want to thank the viewers for spending the time to listen to what Dylan has to say. And when he becomes Senator Dylan, we hope that all of the things that he told us that he's going to do, he will do. So with that, I think you've had an opportunity to find out what he's all about, where he comes from, and what he intends to do. So with that, thank you very much for watching. You've been watching another production of Bourne TV.